Hey everyone, welcome to another electrifying episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into an exciting, transformative conversation that could redefine not just how we think about construction, and I have to say, uh, but how we build the very foundation of our business and even our lives. So, joining me today is someone who truly embodies the intersection of innovation, psychology, and entrepreneurship, Dr. Travis Fox. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Travis.
Thank you. Well, that was a wonderful intro. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate being opportunity. Every time I hear someone
Uh-huh.
introduce me, I always go, are they talking about me? Is that me they're talking? Wow, that's great. Oh, wow. What an interesting journey. I wonder what oh, that's me. I need to check in. That's really cool. So thank you for always bringing that back to me. I appreciate that very much. An honor to be here.
Lovely, lovely. You're welcome. And I'll quickly introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners,
Thank you.
Dr. Travis Fox is also known as the Mindscape Architect. So he has spent over 3 decades helping individuals and entrepreneurs break free from mental limitations and create their dream lives. So he is a celebrated Emmy Awards winner, a doctor of psychology and clinical hypnotherapy, and a powerhouse of wisdom in the world of business and the personal transformation. I
Oof.
mean,
Are you talking about me,
how?
sir? Or we're right back to
Yes.
where we started. When you said 3 decades, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Ooh, hmm. People are like,
Yeah.
oh, well, you've been doing it a long time. I'm like, yeah, don't remind me. And I'm just like, how about we just started? Because keep the
Uh,
adventure in it. But thank you for that introduction. It's very kind and a pleasure to be on the show.
Lovely, lovely. Dr. Travis,
Mm,
uh, I really love this three-word thing. Build your fortress.
thank
So,
you.
what inspired you to create this initiative? I mean, how does it tie into your philosophy as a mindscape architect?
Yeah, great question. And I'll answer them in reverse if you'll allow me.
Sure,
As a corporate
please.
architect, really what I do is the blend and the intersection, as you so eloquently said, of
Uh-huh.
how is our mindset and our culture and how are we working as a culture on brand and alignment
Mm.
simultaneously creating our corporate initiatives and structure and how we're going out into marketplace, doing those simultaneously on all fronts. And I would give you an analogy in as
Mm.
a baseball analogy, although I'm not a
Okay.
baseball expert by any stretch. But if you remember in the hitting lineup, you have your first, second, and third, players out there who generally going to, your power hitters are going to get you on base. And I analogize that to our corporate execs, chairperson,
Mhm.
CEO, president, etc. And then I come along as the fourth hitter. I'm the cleanup hitter that says, okay,
Mm.
we can be in every different division, not from an expertise point of view, but from an operational and mindset so that we're efficient, we're on point, we're on brand, and most importantly, we're on culture. In all
Mm.
the 3 decades, going back to
Yeah.
that comment, that I've observed not only in my own journeys and my own companies, but also
Mhm.
to in externals and consulting for the companies that I do now and continue to do so is
Mm.
culture is actually the bigger problem in most interrupted sector
Yeah.
in any company. And people go, oh, well, this is our company culture. This is our mission statement. This is who we are. Those are great, but that's not what I mean. I mean, how
Mm.
do we actually create a culture where we're employing all of the aspects of the individual, meaning, you know, um, both their past experiences and their past trauma. And I by trauma meaning specifically into business trauma. And I know people go, well, what's business trauma? I'm like, well, if you've been an
Mm.
entrepreneur, you've been in business, you've had trauma. You've had people leave, you've had contracts blow up, you've had financial concerns, as every startup does to a certain degree. You have infrastructure, you have all of these things that are going on. And
Mm.
when we get too deep into the weeds, and meaning that we're losing the focus of who we are,
Yeah.
there's architectural ways that we help these companies not only merge the
Mm.
psychology of it and understanding of it and really pulling in so where the people are, they're not just employees, they are true members of the team, even from the simplest as a further external from the CEO
Mm.
or chairperson all the way to that to the board level. And so that as you do that, you're also in brand alignment, brand revenue, your USP, and moving from an MVP to a viable product to scalability and ultimately some form of exit or acquisition. So
Mm.
it's the blend of those two. And for me, as how my little brain works, it really serves my purpose because my brain has 10 different conversations going on,
Mm,
listening to everybody. And as a producer, that's kind of your role anyways, because you're dealing with every department and
mm,
holding this production together to create whatever the outcome is: television show, film, corporate sector, app, whatever we're doing. And so for me, it constantly makes it fun. And Build Your Fortress took on the ideology of, well, wait a minute. If we look at the hierarchy of needs from Maslow going all the way back to the turn of the century in the 20th century, food,
mm,
air, water, shelter, kind of self-acceptance. Well, I don't know anything about food supply, so I stay out of that, although architecture would be the same. And
mm,
water, that's a whole thing that we always constantly have to deal with on a global level. But let's start with the basic themology that every person,
mm.
regardless of where they are in their life, would like to have a place to call home and a place where you can kind of hang your hat, for lack of definition.
Mm,
It is the dream generally across a global standard. And what we kind of looked at was, the way we build, specifically here in the United States, it is an
mm,
archaic model. What I mean by that is it is truly going back, to the 18th century. We are still building under the same concept of how we did barn raising back in the colonial days. Does this
yeah.
stick and frame? And now we've subbed that out and we've created general contractors and all these layers.
Mm,
Yes, and they're niche markets, and I get that. But however, in today's market, we have just the United States, not including what's
mm,
currently happening right now in the disasters that are happening in the United States and globally for that matter.
mm.
We are in the United States, we have an 8 million home
Wow.
deficit to the population of the United States and growing, not because we have economic failure, not because
Mm,
they don't qualify, and not because they've chosen to become homeless or from the system,
mm.
because we just don't have it. We just literally don't have the ability to house our own population, and that's becoming a global effect now. And to the
Yeah.
point of why, in my humble opinion, we're not building fortresses. We're building sticks and bricks and things that are quick, fast, in a hurry, but then don't survive the test of time. They don't operate well with the current grid system, meaning
Yeah.
electrical or power base.
Mm,
They don't survive storms, and they take so long to build that we will never. We're just literally handing this downhill problem to our children and to our grandchildren, because
mm.
8 million homes doesn't sound like a lot, but if you've ever tried to build 8 million homes, I try, it'll take you an entire lifetime and you still won't make a dent. So we all had to focus on this. And I got really passionate about, well, if you look at times of humans, fortresses, de facto castles, were
Mhm.
where people fell to. That was where you kept your family. That was where you kept the legacy of a country. That was where you kept
Mm,
the architecture of ancestry, all of
yeah.
these things of your fortress. So fortress had multiple layers of meaning for us, but also too was you can build a fortress today in a day, in two
Mm,
days. And I'm not talking about prefab and I'm not talking about modular. I'm talking about structural, actually build on site, slab on grade, and we can move this process along. So the entire ecosystem, from developer to general contractor to sub to buyer to city to community to state to country,
mm.
all participate, because it does truly take all of us
Yeah.
to build communities. But it starts with the nucleus of how do we build these structures so that they are better, faster, greener, stronger, and
Mm,
commiserate with where we are now in the 21st century, and using materials that in some cases can be recycled, and in our case it can be, but also reducing our load on a lumber basis, because on an average home built here in the United States from sticks and bricks, on average, you're going to have 30% more waste doing it that way than you would doing it through high performance panels, as an example.
mm.
Why? Because humans are cutting and measuring on site, and we're just ordering everything to block. I just ship me a pallet of this and I'll adjust it on site. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's a lot of material that's wasted. It's a lot of time that's wasted. It's not necessary. And the global housing crisis is reaching epidemic proportions given the state of affairs that we deal with, whether that's from war, whether that's from climate change or adjustment of climate, whether that's just natural storms,
Mm,
grid failure. It's like, guys, we are growing so fast as a people, meaning on a global scale, that
true.
we're not really taking care of people. And that became the impetus for Build Your Fortress as the
Mm,
brand, as the ideology, and also the automation, because the technology has been around. Our original company's been around for over 20 years, and market adoption is about lack of knowledge to the public. They don't know what they
mhm.
don't know. So we do that, to educating general contractors and developers about these advanced materials, because they know what they know. Their expertise is in sticks and bricks. That's what they learned. That's how they mentored. That's how they apprenticed, and they don't know what they don't know. And they're not required to do ongoing education here in the United States. And then three, let's look at it from a governmental level. What are our labor force opportunities that allow us speed to market, to continue to turn the notes, to drive the economy, to keep interest rates down, push into a volume into the marketplace that
Mm,
allows everybody to attain their fortress, whatever level of financial capability they're at. And we stop using words like affordable housing, which is the biggest insult, in my humble opinion, you could say to someone,
mhm,
because what you're really saying is, you can't afford this, so I'm going to give you this cheaper version, and I'm still
mm,
going to maximize my profit. And we've gotten, in my humble opinion, too far into the weeds of profit over people.
mhm.
We have to keep rebuilding. It's a compounding effect when these storms come in, because we're not building structures that can survive, or at least give a fighting chance for these families, these corporations, these office buildings, even just storage sheds. Anything you can build with sticks and bricks, you should be building with SIPs instead, for all
Yeah.
of those benefits and all of us at large. And that's really how it became its thing. And that's what I do as a corporate architect.
Wow. That's perfect. Perfect. Really perfect. I
Thank you.
mean, you often speak about the mental landscapes and their role in shaping the success. So, how does this concept connect to the physical landscape? It's to the construction.
Are you talking about the physical structure connecting
Yeah.
to?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I
Mm,
understand the question. Sure.
yeah. Yeah.
So how does a panel connect to a foundation, as an example? Is that the question, sir?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, simple question. So you'd have your standard, slab on grade. You've poured your foundation. You can do it on
Mm,
pillars as well, because there's environments that we build in that are
mm,
less supportive, i.e., I'll use Louisiana as an example here in the United States.
mm,
It's swampland. So putting a foundation isn't probably the smartest thing you could do. So we would put it on
mm,
pillars and create that foundation, and obviously allow for tidal floodplains, et cetera, or oceanic surges. But generally on a slab on grade, you're just basically going to put depending on your size and the depth of your panel. Our standard is
mm,
6 inches thick. So to give you an idea, and then for audience who is listening to this, I
mm,
want you to imagine in your mind an ice cream sandwich. You have an OSB layer that is designed specifically for SIP. You have hyper compressed polystyrene or styrofoam that's super compressed, so all the air is out of it. So it's solid core. And then on the other side is that same OSB. So when you put the structure together, you literally will run your rail on the foundation, generally 2x6, and we pop it right into the foundation, and the SIP sits right on top of it and actually screws right into the wood. So we're still getting our wood phraseology and our structural. And then we put the panels together and they slip through a spline. And then every 3 inches we go down and we pop in the screws and nails to support it, and you're done. And then if you want super insulation beyond what we already
mm,
provide, which for our standard 6 inch panel as an example, is an R25. So it stays constant for decades, because
mm,
polystyrene doesn't decompress or decompose. It's not subject to water. As you know from our landfills, something that is a whole nother concept that we'll get into, later in a minute, that I'm
mm,
very passionate about as well. But it solves that problem, and it gives us an R factor that's constant. Now, when we do that in sticks and bricks, as an example, we're doing a frame generally 16 on center, and then you have these air gaps, and then you put the insulation in, and now you have those air gaps, and then we'll drill holes through each one of those studs to
mm,
run our electrical conduit. And we've already weakened our structure, in at least in part and partiality. We don't
mm.
need to do that. And we take these first 7 steps of construction on your
Yeah.
line item and your materials package, and you slam them into one, and you go, boom, I put the panel up. My OSB is already there. I can go straight to drywall. My corners are at 90 degrees already. I'm hitting
Mhm,
against an OSB. So my drywall is going to be nice and flush, and I can put it up in 3 times as fast, because I'm not trying to find the stud and missing and wasting. And again, more drywall gets wasted on that. Here, it just goes right up, go right to tape it, right to mud. You're good. Outside, you go to your externals, whether that's a wrap style, or it's going to like a zip board as an example, not to plug them, but they're a good company. To go right to your externals, and then you're right into your finishings, because all the windows and doors are already pre-cut at our factory when we ship those panels to you. And there are individual panels. And what makes it even easier, so going to that ice cream sandwich, each panel is numbered and each panel stack is numbered. So you literally are ice cream sandwiches and paint by numbers, which allows our labor force to expand, because you don't require all expert skilled labor forcing to get your structure up. Now that allows us to bring more people in for labor and to build faster, with oversight, of course, because again, it's not
mm,
rocket science, but allows us to speed to build without losing integrity or quality insurance. And so that's how we attach it. That's how we do it. And we do external walls, and then we tend to do the roofs as well. And our roof is about an R51 factor coming in static. Well, that's huge when you're talking about a family,
mm,
who's trying to take care of whatever their family size, and their children, or the family that's maybe just getting into their first home and they're all piled in together. Well, that electric bill and that heating bill and that cooling bill are bills that people don't pay attention to when they buy a home. They're like, oh, well, I'm buying the home and I kind of get what it's going to approximate cost. Well,
Mm.
that's subjective, sir, because when you get into your home, everybody has a different threshold. Some like it hot, some like it cold, some like a variant. And if your fortress isn't contained and keeping that heat and cooling loss, you are literally burning money right outside through your house and it's just going through. And that becomes problematic. And people generally, we don't tell them to think about those things. We say, well, here's your mortgage, here's your interest, here's your insurance, this is your monthly mortgage payment, this is what you're going to kind of need to deal with. And we kind of look at it, but don't really pay attention until we get our first electric bill. We're like, oh my God, oh, wow, oh, holy hell. How am I going to pay for groceries this month? Or how am I going to make the car payment? Or how am I going to have an asset? And that's what really Fortress was. Its other model was, the fortress is really an asset. If we go all the way back to medieval times, the fortress itself had a keep. Every castle has one. Well, every person should have their fortress. That's where they keep their memories. It's where
Mm.
they keep their financial assets. So they keep all of those things that they need for that family's survival and success into the next generation. And the fortress, house, or structure should be an asset. It should be something that it is continuing to grow because it doesn't deplete itself as fast as we would in traditional builds. And we see this now. We see other parts of the world who have, and this is the best analogy I give everyone, is they've moved into the Jetsons era of building with
Uh,
new materials, advanced resources, mitigating our use and loss waste, improving our HVAC capabilities. I mean, let's be candid, everyone. 45 years ago, we had a little show called Star Trek that said, beam me up, Scotty. And we had these little, tricorder things that they would use. And we're like, well, that'll never happen. And now we all talk on these little devices that you would know as a smartphone around the world. And this computing power is insane. And we're having conversations now through the thing, called the internet. And we have
mm.
electric driving cars where we have rockets that land themselves now. I mean, why shouldn't we have the disruption in the construction and building industry? Just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean that's now the most efficient and coefficient way to do for all of us as a people. And I mean, people on a global scale, not as a country. This is a global scale because this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And as we continue to have, whether you want to agree with the political ideology or not, I'm not here to be a politician. I'm not a politician, and nor do I pick sides.
Mm.
I just look at evidence. These storms around the world are becoming more intense. They're more massive. They do more destruction. And because of the costs of traditional building,
Yeah.
the compounding effect is staggering. And we're not catching up. We're going down a rabbit hole that has a depleting model. All we're doing is setting up our future generations for unsuccess. It makes no sense. And so they really moved from the Jetsons era now, or from the Flintstones era, I should say, moving from the Flintstones building era, sticks and bricks, to the Jetsons. And yet, without losing visual, without losing
Mm.
flexibility, creativity, the architecture, the structure, the engineering, all of those things are still intact. But we're doing it with materials that allow us to be sustainable. We have a
Mm.
better survivability rate. We have a better functionality rate, better grid, and that's better for everybody. And that's where it all goes.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. And also, like, you have spent years helping entrepreneurs unlock their potential. So from there, what advice would you give to business owners who want to incorporate the Fortress advantage into their own ventures?
Yeah, well, thank you, sir. Very kind. Um,
Yeah.
if you're talking about, from the consulting side of what we
Mm.
do, the easiest thing is just to go to my personal website, was travisfox.net. And then you have your corporate architect. We have our corporate alchemist. We have other aspects that we bring in to help, from technology and our tech stack team to our marketing. We do have a complete and immersive marketing division where it's not just, hey, we're going to put your ads up and optimize. It's actually adventures that are created and gamified, and the statistics are staggering, and it has been now for 4 generations. And so it's an entire operation of, we're looking for something new. We've had social media now for the better part going on 3 decades. It hasn't really evolved enough. It's gotten into just everything is an ad. So how do you distinguish yourself as a brand, as a product or an experience. And that's done through immersive advertising through Hatch the Egg. You can go to hatchtheegg.com and see how we do it over there and the statistics on what we do for small businesses all the way to large
Mm.
corporations of it's customer engagement. After post-COVID, I think we all can mutually agree on a
Mm.
global scale, we have been so cocooned and we have been so separate from each other. And yes, while we have amazing communication strategies, like I said a moment ago, with our devices and what we're doing here online, but we're still social people. We're still people that like to engage. And let's macrorize and pull back even further to the 100,000 foot view. And the quote, the great Alan Watts, death is imminent, but
Yeah.
life is a choice. And so now that we've been so cocooned, we've forgotten that there's amazing, great architecture in nature. There's
Mm.
amazing things that we never see that were in 5 miles in the radius of our home because we've become so myopically focused
Mm.
that when we're at home, we can do everything. We have things delivered now. We can talk online. We can watch content on demand. We can really kind of cocoon ourselves in a whole new way. The downside of that is we forget that life is an experience. Life is an adventure. Life is meant to be lived fully and express all of that creativity of you as the individual, whether you're an entrepreneur or just being on a planet, you're valuable, to quote the great Gary Vee on that comment. And I
Mm.
agree. So what if we gave people an opportunity to have adventures and how they do business and how they create cultures and change that? And that's what it does. And so, if that's something anybody's interested, we do consulting. We don't consult with everyone for obviously, because, we want to make
Mm.
sure we focus on
Yeah.
our clients that we take care of and our own our corporate cultures. But I would go to that because the traditional corporate culture has
Mm.
been massively altered, if not completely disrupted, because of COVID on a global scale. So now corporations are dealing with hybridization. Or do we
Mm.
bring everybody back into the office? Do we do hybridization? Do we go globalization? Because what I'm so happy about is we have finally gotten out of this idealization that
Mm.
that's over there. There is no over there on planet Earth anymore. We are completely interconnected. We're
Mm.
completely intertwined, countries, cultures, ideologies. And now with the sharing information, working with talent, and ergo,
Mm.
this conversation, you and I are talking around the world to each other in real time. So the
Yeah.
ideology that there's an us and them model has now started to collapse in a beautiful way. And we're finally starting to realize that, hey, how about we just think it from, and again, at the risk of sounding altruistic, but why not? We're
Mm.
the only neighbors on the planet. We're the only ones here in this entire solar system that we're aware of that is a living organism. Maybe it's time we get out of this competitive mode that we've been into and we create competitive collaboration where we're competing with each other to make each other better and we are working together and everybody gets to participate because again, life is short.
Yeah.
Legacy opportunity is what we're all really chasing, whether that's to the next generation and your children or to leave a historic event to, like the
Mm.
great late Jimmy Carter, who, we got into opportunity to build for him and work with Habitat for Humanity and moving them into the advanced century before he passed. But that kind of a legacy somewhere inside every one of you listening to this, if you're
Mm.
willing to suspend what your brain tells you is the way to do it, and that's the
Yeah.
way it's always been, and these ideologies that are they're just stories, they're just belief systems, they're
Mm.
nothing more. If you're willing to suspend that and just take a quick look inside, it doesn't have to be a big woo woo experience. It's a structured
Mm.
architectural way to do it. Guess what? There's a part of you that has a legacy concept. So, your passion, your purpose, your mission, your vision. And then we're on the opportunity to leave a legacy. And now that becomes this beautiful self-fulfilling prophecy because the purpose drives you to get up every
Mm.
day, to do the vision, to stay on mission, to collaborate with other people and find other people that are on your wavelength, that are jamming to the adventure that you're on, and you're on your track to leave a legacy. And every day when you fantasize about the legacy and what that looks like or what you think it looks like, it drives this thing. Now we don't have to do all this motivation and inspiration. Not that it's bad, but it's like a drug. I go in, I get motivated, I
Yeah.
get really high on a dopamine, and the next day I'm like, dang, I didn't get what I was. And there's some emotionality to that too, because it makes life interesting. And there's
Mm.
the old Chinese proverb, may you live in interesting times. The downside is, you know, interesting times and creating self drama are two
Mm.
very, very different things. They sound similar, but they're not. And there's a fun way to do it. And, our entire objective as the team, when we
Mm.
consult for other companies, and we have three big clients right now that are massive disruptors in
Yeah.
their sectors. And our entire ideology is just make business fun again. Make it
Mm.
fun too. It's not, gee, I work all week. like, "Ugh," and so I can go to the
Mhm.
weekend, right? Because
Yeah.
that's a depleting model of time, and time is your greatest asset. And most people says time is money. I'm like, I respectfully disagree with you. Time is time because you don't
Yes.
get it back. And you can get all the money you want for your time. And I cite as a horrible example, but one that was most notable, the late great Steve Jobs.
Mhm.
Unlimited capital, massive legacy, left
Mhm.
early. So not a dollar did more did that buy him in time. So now we get really crystal clear of where do I focus my time? What is interesting to me? Who do I spend it with? What am I spending it on?
Lovely.
Because there's no refund, there's no chargeback, there's
Mhm.
no, by the way, I can, reinvest it. It's gone. And the moment we shift from time is money, which is really quantifying our life that we're only worth a certain value, which is a horrible psychological experience, in
Yeah.
my opinion. It's a dumb way to approach life. And I mean that respectfully to everybody who thinks that way. But guys,
Mhm.
what if? What if you shift it to time as time? I will guarantee you it will shift how your output in your business works, your personal relationships, and more importantly, your own self healing, because you're a fortress too. Your own body's a fortress, and that's another conversation. But think about that concept thematically, and it will
Exactly.
change your outlook almost instantaneously. It doesn't take a long time. You don't need to go through these woo woo experiences. It's one,
Mhm.
two, three, no different. We have blueprints on how we build houses and
Yeah.
cities and companies. Why don't we have a blueprint for how we build a life that we want and architect the life we want? And
Perfect.
that's where we come in.
Perfect. Perfect. Lovely. So, Dr. Travis, thank you so
Sure.
much for sharing your groundbreaking
Thank you.
vision and insights with us today. It's been
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure exploring how innovation, mindset, and entrepreneurship come together to shape not just the industries but the lives. Yeah. So,
Thank you.
dear listeners, remember that every fortress starts with a single blueprint. And so, ask yourself, like, what foundation are you building today for the life you want tomorrow? So, as always, if you have enjoyed today's episode, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Healthy Mind and Healthy Life. And let's keep building a community where innovation and the growth thrive. So, until next time, stay healthy, stay inspired, and keep creating the life that you deserve. So, thank you so much.